Sam Harris, on a recent podcast, spoke about people who are otherwise intelligent, but also religious. Let's listen.
But then the other side of it is these so-called sophisticated, nuanced people, when you actually press for nuance and intellectual honesty in the domain of their religious convictions, you really just land in an area of kind of unprincipled rule changes in intellectual discourse. I mean, these are not, the nuanced positions for the most part are bullshit. Now, this is not to say that people don't have great experiences that they want to capture in religious language, but when you look at someone like Francis Collins, who's running the NIH, who's a medical geneticist and obviously a very smart guy and made real contributions to science, but he's also a bit of a Bible thumper. He's an evangelical Christian. He believes in evolution, thankfully, but he also believes that immortal souls and free will were just downloaded onto the hard drive of only one species of primate at some point in history by an almighty God. And but he thinks, I mean, and when you ask him about the resurrection, he believes in the resurrection and he believes in the coming resurrection of the dead. And he, I think, is sensitive to how unseemly it is for the head of the NIH to talk about these things. So when you ask him for details, he says, well, it's all very complicated and you should consult the work of John Polkinghorne and N.T. Wright. And when you consult their work, you get just pure madness. It's just a bizarre conflation. It's just a word salad, which is foisted on scientifically illiterate people by scientifically literate people for reasons that are patently emotional and they're actually totally unconstrained by any principles of intellectual honesty. And I think we should be even more critical in some sense of someone like Francis Collins, the so-called nuanced religious person.
I think Bill Maher actually makes the best point about this. He says that smart religious people essentially wall off this topic and don't allow critical thought to enter the conversation in this realm. And I think a lot of that has to do with politically correct culture, because we've essentially made it perceived bigotry and perceived intolerance to even have a discussion about religious doctrines and why people believe as they do. It's almost like some smart people give themselves license to be irrational on the issue of religion. They're allowing themselves to strain credulity in this one area. And then also, there's the problem of what I like to call the smart man's dodge, or people who are too smart for their own good, where they use their reasoning abilities to rationalize their bullshit. So what I mean by that is, they'll do the sidestep of, well, the reason why you think the holy books are absurd, Kyle, is that you're taking them literally. They are all meant to be an allegory. They're all a metaphor. First of all, if it's meant to be an allegory, I don't understand what the allegory is for don't eat shellfish. What's the deeper truth in there that I'm missing? What's the deeper truth in don't eat pork? What's the deeper truth in don't touch your wife when she's on her period? What's the deeper truth in sell your daughter off to her raper? What's the deeper truth to a seven-headed dragon? What's the deeper truth to the world having four corners? In other words, the world being flat. What's the deeper truth there? No, it's just empirically false garbage that you're now trying to pawn off as something other than empirically false garbage. Again, the smart man's dodge. So, here's my point. Taking people at their word is the default position. Like, I had this argument with somebody one time on Twitter. I almost fucking pulled my hair out, and then I decided I'm not going to debate this on Twitter anymore because it's insanity to do so. Where somebody tried to claim that when they say, well, the Bible's just an allegory, right? Or the Bible's just a metaphor. And I say, no, it's meant to be taken literally. They tried to make it a wash and say, well, you say this, I say this, so it's 50-50, nobody knows, let's move along here. No. The burden of proof is on you. The default position is that you take people at their word, and when they say X, they mean X. So when they say, hey, here are 10 commandments, what they mean is, here are 10 fucking commandments. Don't violate these things. If you do violate these things, then see said punishments we wrote down in the Bible for these things, right? So taking people at their word, taking the holy books literally is the default position. You need to come with the overwhelming evidence to tell me that I shouldn't believe my lying eyes when you say, no, they actually mean don't take it literally. It means this weird interpretation that I just fucking made up and came up with right now that you should believe over what it actually says. This is what I mean. Too smart for their own good. Somebody like Reza Aslan, who in many ways I really like, he does this all the time. Where it's like, no, it's just your problem is that you're a fundamentalist, he would say to people like me, because you are interpreting the holy books literally. But again, the default position is that they mean what they say, not that they mean the shit that you just made up because it makes you feel better about the book itself. So, he's got a point, man. I mean, I'm of the belief that the truly, truly intelligent people are people who are willing to be objective even when it's scary to do so, are willing to question everything. What you find a lot of times is that there are smart people who have walled off this part of discussion, who have decided that their religious beliefs are set in stone and don't question that, but every other area they'll be empirical. And you have to come to the conclusion that they really are just not being intellectually honest. They're just not being straightforward. They're lying to themselves. And at some level, they know that what they're doing doesn't make any sense. So if you really want them to break through to the next level and be more intellectual and to try to understand the nature of reality, we should do everything we can to try to explain to them that you should question everything, even things that you hold sacred.